is whether this regime will ever give up its nuclear weapons program. And if the answer is no, then we have to start thinking about how do you increase sanctions to a level where this regime becomes unable to continue revenue to the military, revenue to the elites, and revenue to these weapons programs, and how do we get more information into the North Korean people to tell them what their regime is actually doing and how depressed they are compared to other countries outside of North Korea.
John Nelson-Wright?
I think Anthony's right in highlighting the fact that the North Korean regime is not about to give up its nuclear assets. And this is one part of Kim Jong-un's agenda, a fairly simple agenda based on military strength and economic prosperity. So I think the world does have, unpalatably as it may be, to accept the reality that North Korea is not going to disarm. So that leaves us with, in a sense, the next best scenario, which is slowing down the progress that they're making, finding a mechanism which will delay their continuing advance in their technical capabilities. That's why the emphasis is on negotiations. But it's that second agenda item for Kim Jong-un, economic prosperity. You'll recall that in his New Year addresses, he said repeatedly to his own people, I will not only deliver economic and military strength, but I will guarantee that you will never have to tighten your economic belts again. He needs to deliver on that promise as well. His legitimacy is based on those two key factors.
And in the past, there was starvation at one.
Absolutely. And increasingly, the residents of Pyongyang, admittedly they're a small proportion of the overall population, see economic prosperity as part of their own personal futures. And if that is jeopardized, either as a result of economic sanctions or of failure on the part of the state planning mechanism, that will cost Kim Jong-un some of that political support.
All right, Anthony Ruggiero mentioning the Chinese and the Russians. This Tuesday, they've had different reactions to what's happened with this missile test. Let's first listen to Beijing.
Past experience has already proved that exerting pressure and using sanctions cannot fundamentally resolve this problem. The Korean Peninsula issue is intricate, complex, and long-standing. The only correct way to resolve it is via talks to address each other's security concerns.
All right, so no sanctions talks, say the Chinese. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, while on a visit to the UAE, striking a different tone.
Regarding North Korea and the missile test it's conducting, we stand by the resolution of the UN Security Council and we insist on the fact that our North Korean neighbors should fully respect those resolutions. We base our position on these statements during discussions in the Security Council and will do the same in this session, which as far as we understand will be dedicated to discussing the latest missile launches from North Korea.
So, break this down for us, Dorian. Why?
Very smart Lavrov, as always. You know, the Russian diplomacy is really perfect. You know, that's funny because now at the UN there is the Security Council. You know, they start to talk. They are going to condemn again unanimously this missile launch, and then they already said that they won't start to talk about new sanctions, both China and Russia, before we started the show. And talking about the resolution, that's interesting. Lavrov said, okay, we have to respect the resolution and the sanctions. And just a few months ago, there is this new Russian ferry, opened the lines between Vladivostok and Rason in North Korea with passengers, with Chinese tourists, with Russian tourists, and with North Korean workers. They can commute from North Korea to Russia. Talking about sanctions, I mean, okay, Mr. Ruggiero logic is perfectly printed. I mean, it's obvious, like it looks like perfect. But first, North Korea doesn't want to strike South Korea or Japan. They won't strike that. They won't start the war. Sanctions and diplomacy pressure so far didn't do much to stop. It slowed down a little bit the programs. We don't know the agenda actually of the North Koreans about the programs. I mean, nuclear and missiles. I mean, they have, for many years, they have prepared so much. We don't know what they have in all the tunnels and underground. They can start and keep on working with the missile. They can built indigenously their own missiles now. They don't need foreigners now to do that. So I think it cannot be white or black, It cannot be like they are the bad guys and we are the good guys. I mean, it's much more complex. And now we have to take them as they are, which is not easy, but it's a long term. I mean, the Chinese, of course, they try to abide by the sanctions, but they don't want North Korea to fail. I mean, they need North Korea between the Americans and their own border. So, I mean, every actor in the region needs North Korea, actually. So far, nobody